Good evening. And thank you for that warm welcome. I'm excited to be here tonight. When we talk about equity, there's so many different components and different aspects. And for me, my journey has been 20 years in education. Now, I stand before you as an African-American male that can't recount ever having an African-American teacher. Now, I did have some teachers that were white that made a huge impact. Teachers, coaches that challenged me, that pushed me, that told me, I can be anything that I set my mind to. And they didn't say it because you're a little black kid and we're trying to make you feel better about yourself. They brought me to the table. They prepared me in such a way that I could go out and be successful. So when we talk about equity, we hope that that's the experience that everybody has, right? That you're met where you are, you're given the things that you need in order to make you feel that you're no different than anybody else and that you can come out on top. Now, the biggest truths I've come to know in my 20 years in education: without relationships, the relevance and rigor of education becomes a moot point for students that need it most. Now, these are the students that are never absent. These are the students that if you're a teacher, you say, oh my gracious, they're here again, right? These are the students that you sometimes feel like you've tried everything. You go down to the administrator, you go to the discipline dean, and you say, I don't know what else to do with them. And it's not because they don't like you. It's not even personal. But it's because they've gone through some things. Many people talk about the traumas, the experience that these students have faced, whether they want to or not. No student stands in heaven. No child stands in heaven and says, please send me to the family with all of the hardship. Please make everything difficult for me. Yes, please. Nobody says that, right? And many times students don't realize that the things that they go through, they grow through until they get much older. They look back and they say, man, like that didn't kill me, that made me stronger. Man, I thought that was a hard time, but because of that, I have perseverance. I know how to gain peace in situations. And so a lot of times we get those students when they're in the midst of that. We get those students that come into the building and they haven't seen, their mother have a good day in a long time. They may not have seen their father at all. They may, in around the holidays, they may be upset because while their parents and families talking about going to Aruba and talking about all the gifts that they're going to get, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I'm not going to eat for 10 days. I know if I come to the school, I can at least have breakfast and lunch. And so what I will tell my staff a lot of times is be aware of those students during the haves and have-nots, right? Because those are the kids that may be a little bit more on edge, not because they don't like you, but because life for them is very different. And so as teachers, we don't think that you're mean and that you're evil and that you don't care about kids, but if we don't look at history, right? If we don't look at the facts and we don't look at his story and her story and his story and realize that is history. It's history to those kids. So when you think about Brown versus Board of Education and you think about 1954 and they say, you know what? Separate but equal actually isn't equal. And because of that, we need to make a change. That was 1954. My mother was born in 1955. She didn't go into a desegregated schoolhouse until she was in 6th grade. See, because when the Supreme Court said it wasn't right, the nation didn't say, ping, you're right, we're now going to treat everybody the same. It was just the opposite. It said, we're going to kick and scream, and we're going to make this difficult. And if you were a student of color and you walked into a building, chances are you weren't welcomed. If you were a black educator or a black administrator and you were teaching in the black schoolhouse, chances were you were fired. You were let go. And so if you are 55 or older, you remember these things plain as day. And these people are your grandmothers that are telling you those stories, that are telling you why they do or don't believe in this or why they do or don't trust certain type of people. And no one should have to suffer the sins of their father, right? Or the sins of the people before them. But unfortunately, stories do get told because nobody comes and is born into this world knowing anything. You learn it. So the behaviors that we see, the behaviors of hate, the behaviors of distrust, of treachery, those are learned behaviors. And so we hope that the cycle is broken. And we've seen that. We've seen that there are some people that will stand for the right thing because it's the right thing to stand for. We see that there are some people that believe that all children can and will learn, and we provide them a seat at the table, and we give them what they need so that they can truly feast on education and grow and be nourished and do big things. Okay? We do see those things. The second thing that I've come to know in my 20 years is that education is so important that we must get excited about it. If you've ever watched Charlie Brown, and the teacher is talking as wah, 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 that's sometimes what students hear if they don't feel like you care. If they don't feel like you know where they're coming from. If they don't feel like you have an understanding of any of the struggles that is going on in their life, you become that muted out teacher. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you have to work a little bit harder to find that connection. So some things we must commit to. We must commit to the inherent belief that all students can and will learn, and we are the ones for the job. See, as an educator, you can never forget that with great power comes great responsibility. And I didn't come up with that, but if you watch Spider-Man, you know where that came from, right? We must commit to never assume that's what's good for one student is good for all. See, I've seen that happen where you might say, well, all of these kids come from that same trailer park, so here's what they like. Or all of these little black boys, if you do this, this is how they're going to respond. And that's not the case. You must look at every student individually and build that relationship. We must commit to seek ways to build connections with our students. I remember doing a walkthrough in a classroom one time, and I was walking around, and it was an English class, and students had to write about a music artist or that they thought about, and they had to reflect on something. And so I said to a young man, I said, who are you writing about? And he looked at me, and he said, Childish Gambino. And he thought he was going to stump me, because he looked at his class, his partner, and kind of smirked like he doesn't know who that is. And I said to him, hey, did you remember that interlude where he was on the bus after camp, and he told this girl that he thinks is destiny, and he fell asleep, and he woke up, and she and all of her friends were laughing at him, and the kid's mouth was like. And every day after that, when he saw me walking down the hall, he would say, hey, Dr. Carter, what's up? And he would tell his friends, hey, he knew who that was. And by making that connection, that enabled me to then say, hey, where you plan on going for college? What do you want to do after you leave high school? What do your grades look like? But we had that connection, so he knew it wasn't just me talking to him saying what I had to say. He knew it was bigger than that. We must commit, however, to never sacrifice structure and accountability in the name of building a relationship. See, sometimes we think being their friend is what's needed, but structure is what's needed. And I can tell you, I've had to wear the hat of, I'm going to motivate you, but you'll also end up in my office and we're going to have a conversation because you've done something that has led to a referral. But it's not just me doling out the discipline, it's me saying to him or her, hey, help me to understand what happens. I always say to a student, help me to understand what happened, because I need to know what they were thinking, because their perception is their reality. And if it is that they felt like they were done wrong, they were disrespected, they were spoken to in a way that wasn't right, then I need to understand that so we can have a conversation about it, so I can also share that with the teacher, and so that we can also work on some skills to build it in such a way that that doesn't keep happening. For certain students, I might have to say, hey, listen, if you ever feel like you're in that situation again, ask to be excused, come down and see me if you need to cool down. Other students, I can look at them and say, now, should you have said that? Nah, Dr. Carter, I shouldn't have said that. Is this going to be an ongoing thing? Nah, man, man, you cool. So I don't want to be down here to see you unless it's about something good, right? And once you establish that kind of rapport, a lot of times it will work itself out. Now, that's not always the case, and sometimes that student that needs you the most, you might not be able to crack them until a year later. Or they come and they see you after graduation, they run up to you, and they say, Miss Ya, I'm so excited. You know, I want to tell you what I'm doing now, and I know that at the time you didn't think I was, and here I am. And they walk away, and you're like, man, I didn't even know that kid liked me. But it happens. We must commit to teach students to be critical thinkers. They must react. They must be able to reason, explain, analyze, make connections, and transfer that. And that's not just in the schoolhouse. You need to be critical thinkers everywhere you are at all times. And we want to impart that within our students. We must commit to not being like the boring PD that we as adults can't stand. Now, any profession in America, you find yourself sitting at round tables like this for some speaker or some professional development, and you find yourself checking your Instagram, doing selfies, because the person that is in there is just droning on and on and on, and they become that teacher, again, from Charlie Brown. And you say, this was the most painful PD. I'd rather pull my eyelashes out. I don't want to be here. Hey, can you text me or call me and I can pretend like I have something important to go to because I need to go. And see, we as adults don't like that kind of session. We don't like having to sit into that. When we mark it on our calendar, if it's that same person that we know is terrible, we're like, oh my gracious. But then as an educator, we make the mistake of delivering education that way and wonder why the students aren't taking away from it what you want. Now, I'm not saying all teachers, because I've seen amazing teachers. I've seen teachers that knock it out of the park with every student that walks into their building, into their classroom, because I've been doing this for a while. But I've also seen some where if I start talking about the different types of teachers that can be in a building, like people are looking at them and I have to say, don't say any names, okay? We must commit to move from if only to here's how. You know, a lot of times we talk about educational initiatives and mandates and things that have gone on. We talk about, way back in the day, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We talk about Goals 2000. We talk about No Child Left Behind. We talk about Racing to the Top. We talk about now the Every Student Succeeds Act. But we don't talk about the importance of building relationships. We've thrown money, we've thrown mandates, we've thrown initiatives, we've thrown so many things at what we call the problem of an achievement gap. But we've never really sat down to say, how do you feel? What's going on? Help me to help you, help me to understand. How can we make this better for you so that you can be successful? Because as adults, that's what we want people to say. If you're not enjoying work, you want your boss to be real and come to you and say to you, hey, talk to me, what's going on? Right? Like, these are the things that we want as adults, but our kids want these as well. Now, the younger they are, they may not be able to express it, but they still feel it. They can tell if someone doesn't like them. They can tell if someone doesn't care. They can tell if when they walk in the building, your face is bent up, like, here you are again. I didn't want to see you. They know that. Now, as Dr. Jones said, I was also a coach, okay? I have a ring to show that I was a successful coach. We won a state championship. And here's what I learned as a coach. When we talk about the difference between equality and equity. So I coached D-line. I coached a lot of different things, but D-line, that was my baby. That was my wheelhouse, right? And so I learned to get the desired outcome from all of my athletes, I had to meet them where they were individually. I had to find out what made them tick, determine their perception of what I was asking them to do, assess their gap of understanding and ability, and support them until they could consistently perform at a high level in high-pressure situations. That was on the football field. But I guarantee you, if you take this into the classroom, you'll see results. If you take this into your organization, if you take this into your job, if you take this home and apply this, you will see results. Because it's not just about saying, hey, you're on the D line, everybody line up, and I expect you all to do the same thing. It's not going to happen. It's saying, hey, you're more advanced, so I need you to do this, this, and this. Son, I just need to take you under my wing. We're going to go over here and work a little bit longer. You two, get together, work on push, pull, rip, fighting pressure with pressure. And so, you have to find out what works to get the desired outcome so that you can be successful with all of your students. Quick wins, all right? A lot of times we talk about, what's not working, what's not going on. So some quick wins will be build rules together and teach expectations. A lot of times we'll ask somebody to do something. Now, I asked you to do that, and we don't know if they can do it or not. If I say to you, hey, I need you to clean your room real nice. In my mind, I'm thinking about what real nice looks like. In your mind, you're like, sweep everything under the bed. Got it. And I come in, and I look under the bed, and like, what is this? You're like, well, that's real nice. You can't see anything. But what I meant was fold your clothes. Put those in the drawers. Put your toys away. Mop your floor. Wipe those smudges off your wall. And so until I teach you how to do that, I can't expect you to do that. Until we teach our students what it looks like, what it feels like, how it should go down, we can't expect them to just show up and show out. Be approachable. Okay? No one likes to walk up to somebody that looks like they don't want you in the building. Never use sarcasm. And some of you will swear you're great at it until there's a student better than you at it, and now you want to write them up. I'm telling you, stay away from sarcasm. I had a teacher say to a kid, instead of just saying, put your phone away, how would you like to not have your phone for a Friday? Now, if you know high school kids like I know high school kids, that went south. Okay? Just say, put your phone away, this is your warning. Okay? Because we have a no phone out policy. So stay away from sarcasm because it's going to come back to bite you. And then I'm going to also call you down to my office and say, hey, help me to understand why you said this like this. Because surely you realized they were going to say that like that, right? Avoid entrapment and power struggles. Be consistent. If you're going to give this person this kind of consequence, then give that person the same consequence if they did the exact same thing. It's nothing I dislike more than two kids coming from the same class and one got written up, got a different type of referral for something that they did that same person was doing. Or they say, there are 5 other people that have their phone out in the class. And then I have to say to the teacher, they said there were 5 other phones out. Was that true? Well, I don't know, maybe. Be consistent. Actively self-reflect on personal bias. We all have bias. Let's be honest. We all have bias, and based upon those bias, whether they are out there bold and loud or if they're off to the corner, because of those bias, we think certain things. We might stay away from certain people. We might make certain judgment calls. We might assume that, hey, that kid probably is from the projects because he's hanging with those kids, and so I bet if I go over and say this, then they'll think I'm cool, and you might just offend somebody. Please, 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 always self-reflect on your personal bias. Do your research when trying to gain a better understanding of your students. It is not your student's job to tell you about poverty. It is not your student's job to tell you about hate, racism, about just the different things that go on that they have to go through that if you Google search them, you can find them. If you drive through your community, you can see where they live. Don't put that extra pressure on that child to make them say to you, so how's living out there? Is it bad? You want to talk about it? Because they're probably not going to want to talk about it. They're probably going to think you're nosy. They're probably going to think that you want to go back and get them in trouble, and then they're going to shut down. Okay? And I want to leave you with this. Maya Angelou, I had the pleasure of getting to hear her speak. I want to say it was probably back in 2013. And she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Remember that students do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thank you.